Okay, a meeting of the Middletown Police Commission is called to order. Chief, you want to take a roll?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Commissioners. Attendance today, we have Mayor DeStefano, Commissioner Vignola, and Commissioner Sullivan. Commissioner Rodriguez and Commissioner Mills are absent today.
Okay. Go ahead, Chief. I'm just avoiding.
So we have no interviews this evening, just our basic agenda. I'll start off with some communications since our last meeting. There was a press release that we put out in regards to the July 11th shooting, or shots fired call on the Phillips Street area. And then I emailed the commission a copy of our repeat offenders list that was dated January through June 2022. That was mailed to or emailed to the commission on July 11th. Would the commission like to discuss either of those communications?
I'm good. Gene?
Next item on the agenda would be our minutes from our June Police Commission meeting. They were emailed to the commission as well for review. If no one has any objections to the writing, if I could have a motion to accept them as written. So I have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Accepted as written. They will be posted on the website as soon as they go to the clerk's office. Looking at the June monthly report, which I sent that out earlier this week as well. So we are seeing an increase in some of our crime activity as well as our productivity. So just going through some of the basics real quick. For the month of June, we handled 3,187 calls for service, which was a slight increase from the month of May. Ends up being a 1% increase. So we've been seeing, since the warm weather, an increase every month. Pretty steady. Part 1 crimes, we're still seeing an increase on our Part 1s. For the month of June, we handled 73 Part 1 crimes. Out of those 73, 11 fell into the violent categories, 62 in the property category. And just to highlight, the driving numbers in that category are the larcenies, with 52. Out of that 73, 52 of them are larcenies. And that's could be a combination of larcenies from a grocery store or any type of business. It could be, a larceny involved in a domestic, a larceny at a school, a larceny from the street. So it's a combination of things, but that is what is driving those numbers right now. Part 2 crimes, we dealt with 115 Part 2 crimes in the month of June. Slight increase over May. In May, we had 107. Arrests for the month of June, the department made 225 arrests, which was a 3% increase over the previous month of 219. A lot of that is proactive enforcement, the officers going between calls and dealing with quality of life issues, focusing on those hotspot areas or areas of concern. For the month of June, the department issued 411 traffic summons, which was a slight decrease, a 10% decrease from the previous month, which they issued 459. But overall, year to date, we're still at an increase from the previous year, carrying a 16% increase year to date in traffic summons. Parking summons for the month of June, 290 were issued, a significant decrease from the previous month of 364. For the month of June, we had 12 use of force incidents, which equates to 5% of all arrests. So that seems to be the number we kind of carry is about 5% of arrests we make end up in some type of use of force. And for the month of June, we responded to 4 reports of shots fired, 3 of which were unfounded. 1 was confirmed, which was June 15th at 17 Chestnut Street. We have identified the suspect in that, and we actually have an active arrest warrant for his arrest. He has, from what our investigation has led us to believe, that he's outside of our area right now, so that a warrant has been put into the database in case anyone comes in contact with him. Just a real quick recap on that happened midday on the 15th in front of 17 Chestnut. The victim in that is a city resident as well from Montgomery Street. He was also a victim of a robbery back in September of 2021. Since our last meeting, we had our 4th of July weekend and everything that comes along with that, the good and the bad. On our end, our calls for service, this year we saw a slight decrease in comparison to previous years. So this year we handled 103 calls for service over that weekend that were particularly pertaining to fireworks. In the 2021 year, there's 121. In 2021, we made 32 arrests during this time frame. which is July 1st through the 5th, and 2022-19. We did do a quick overlay of that and a debriefing on our enforcement efforts for the 4th of July weekend, and we found that we have some improvements to make and some ways to do it. We also worked with the Intel Center out of Goshen to do some overlay heat maps. So we did a heat map of 2021 calls pertaining to fireworks, 22 calls pertaining, we overlaid them, and that'll be the basis for our enforcement going into 2023, because we realize that we do have some work to do there still. We are currently working towards our 5-year reaccreditation, the New York State reaccreditation. We have an audit this year. It's every 5 years we're audited. They send a team of auditors to our facility to start going through our policy, our procedure, our records to make sure that we're in compliance with the 160 standards that are set forth by the state. So we are scheduled for October 4th through the 6th to have our reaccreditation audit. So we'll be working diligently to make sure that everything is in place for that audit. Since our last meeting, and I did email the commission about this as well, we had a Women's Right March planned for July 4th, which ended up having a very small turnout. The organizer did not contact us or go through any of the approval process to host such of an event. We came across her flyer on social media and contacted her to not only inform her of the process, but to get some information from her, such as her route, what her intentions were, how many people, so on and so forth. Once we made contact with her, she became very compliant with us as far as giving us information as what she planned on doing, the number of people. Fortunately, her intentions to have a large group didn't work out. She ended up with a very, very small group that if we didn't know about it, we wouldn't have even known they were out there. It was so small. But that is something that we continue to monitor, and because of the possibility of having several hundred people, we did plan accordingly, and we did seek assistance from the New York State Police and the Orange County Sheriff's Office for that event. In collaboration with the Recreation and Parks Department, we hosted this past weekend, July 16th, Cops and Kids Field Day at the Parks and Rec Center. Great turnout, another great event, another great collaboration. On July 13th, last Wednesday, we hosted our first Jump Out Barbecue of the year. We did Jerome Neal Park on Linden Avenue. Started off a little slow, but within about 25 minutes to 30 minutes into it, we had a full house, and we ended up distributing all the food that we had. So it ended up being a really good turnout. It's nice to be back out in the community and doing those events. Interacting with the youth, it's really great. Officer Galley, she's our DARE officer, Too Good for Drugs program. During the summer, we have her tasked with doing a lot of youth events. She put together a walking and hiking program for the summer, where she's meeting 1 to 2 days a week, depending on what her other schedule is, and doing basically guided walks, hikes through the reservoir trails and the Heritage Trail. And each week she's had a group of people, so it seems to be well received. Last Wednesday, also, we attended the Parks and Recreation community or award ceremony that they do every year, and the Middletown Police Department was recognized and awarded their Community Partner Award for 2022. So we're very happy. They've been a great resource to us. We couldn't do some of the stuff that we do in the community without them, so we thank them, and we appreciate that they recognized our efforts as well. I'm currently working with our midnight supervisors to address some of the productivity on the 12 to 8 shift. Sat down with them, realized that there's some challenges there with some of the staffing and lack of productivity, especially during certain hours. So I sat down with the supervisors and had them draft a plan together of what they felt they would be, what would be resourceful to get some better productivity. So that's been implemented. We did one follow-up meeting thus far, saw some progress. We still have some work to do, and we have another follow-up meeting planned for early August to make sure that they're staying on track and that our staff is giving us the service that this community deserves. We are also currently in the process of adding 2 additional fixed license plate readers. Last year, the city allowed us to install 10. We're adding 2 additional ones. This was not something we budgeted for, but we did reallocate some money through the BOE and through the council from another program. We had the QHIT, which was a survey software that would automatically go out, it was an automated system. We weren't really getting many responses in return, and it didn't really seem to be anything of value that we could really work on improving the department. So we reallocated those funds to buy 2 additional LPRs, which we use on a regular basis. And I have a few examples of some great work that came from the LPRs. We also have received a grant from Senator Skoufis to help offset the cost of our National Night Out event, which is going to be August 2nd. He's allocating $6,000 towards our event, so we'd like to thank him for that. And then we also were able to have some funding within our budget transferred, went through the BOE and the Kalman Council in June to fund a second leadership academy. We did one this spring, which was a great success. We had a great group of students, and we realized the value of that, so the city has agreed to give us some additional funding to host one this fall. And we'll continue to look for grants and whatnot to continue funding these. And we continue to work hand in hand with the school to address inappropriate and violent behavior demonstrated by some of the youth, and I'll get into some of that as we move forward in the agenda here as well. They've really stepped up and helped us out a lot with some stuff. Any questions on those items thus far?
None for me.
Staffing wise, we currently have 4 vacancies. We have 68 sworn on the payroll right now. We're budgeted for 72. What we did in June is based on a request from the school to add an additional SRO to the high school this fall, which would be 2 in the high school, and bring our total SROs to 5. I went before the Board of Estimates and the Common Council and requesting an additional officer be added to our budget, which they approved. Therefore, we went from 71 to 72. Out of our current 68, I have 1 on disability, 1 on maternity leave, and I still have 3 in the police academy. The police academy is scheduled, the graduation is next Friday, not tomorrow, the following Friday, July 29th at 10 a.m. at the Paramount Theater. So if anyone would like to attend, it's a very nice ceremony that they conduct. The results of our April police officer exam should be coming out any day. It was given April 9th, I believe. So the official results should be coming out, I would imagine, this coming week. And then we'll start doing planning agilities, backgrounds, psychologicals, interviews, all that type of stuff. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get people's backgrounds done in time to get into the next police academy, which is scheduled to start August 22nd. However, we could canvass that list and look at it to see if there's any candidates in the top that are already police certified, and then we could focus on their backgrounds. Some of the statistics from some of the special units. Earlier this spring, we put together a couple special details. One is a traffic detail. For the past about 7 weeks, I had Officer Conklin assigned to the traffic detail. She just concluded her stint there. She did an outstanding job. She really took ownership of this assignment, focused on high traffic areas of complaint, areas of concern. During that short time, she issued 354 tickets herself and made 41 arrests. Out of those 41 arrests, 3 were felony, 26 were misdemeanor, 12 violations. She seized 13 sets of fake license plates, recovered 1 stolen vehicle, and recovered 22.48 grams of narcotics, to include methamphetamine, which we have not seen in this community in a long time. So kudos to her. She did an outstanding job. Didn't sit still too often, was out there really working.
What period of time?
That was from May 16th to July 15th, so just about 2 months, and she had a vacation in there as well. The other special unit we have out right now is our plainclothes detail. I have Officer Chasapanta, Officer Harlan in there. They've been in there since the beginning of June. Their focus is on hot spots, areas of crime, quality of life. They've been working on details with narcotics, with the detectives, and with our juvenile aid. So thus far, they've made 75 arrests. Some of the details they did is they did a tobacco detail, they did a taxi detail, prostitution detail, and I think that's it. But I have some of that coming up as well. Also under staffing, Detective Waymer did officially retire effective June 30th. I wish him well in the next adventure of his life. And Detective Nyland is planning to retire in January of 2023. He came and advised me of such. Any questions in regards to staffing? Some training that the department participated in since our last meeting. I have three of our staff that they're in the process. It's not totally complete, but they're attending the FBI basic photography course. I have 6 people went through the drone pilot ground school to be able to officially fly the drones for the department. Since they became certified, we've been using the drones on a regular basis, which have been awesome, really awesome to do stuff with. We had Detective Rosen attend the child forensic interviewing training. Myself, Lieutenant Dolan, Sergeant Welch attended the Extreme Risk Protection Orders training, which they refer to as ERPO, or the red flag, with the new laws that went into effect on July 6th. We sent an officer to the academy to train the recruits in TASER, and we sent another officer to the academy to train recruits in reality-based training. And then I will be attending the New York State Chiefs Conference this coming week, which is in Queensbury, New York. Any questions on training? We're still working with Lexipol. That is the company that we hired to help us with advancing our policy and procedures. We are on track right now. We still are meeting weekly, twice a week, and we're on track to come to the end probably in December. And then hopefully we'll be able to implement that new policy and procedure into the beginning of 2023. So because of the accreditation, we don't want to release any of the new policies until we get through this accreditation, recertification in October. So as soon as that's done, I will start forwarding some of the new policies to the commission for your review. Since our last meeting, I've had one officer that came down with COVID. Everything's fine. He's back to work. Some of the upcoming events that we have, starting this coming Monday, July 25th, will be the first of 3 sessions of the Youth Police Academy that Officer Galley has put together and will be running. It seems like we have full house all 3 weeks, and each week is a different age group, so we kind of separate the ages so that's more pertinent to that specific age. As I mentioned, National Night Out will be Tuesday, August 2nd at Thurl Park. Unfortunately, I will not be here, but my staff will be there. I'll be out of town that week with family. We have, and I mentioned this last meeting, we are planning a county-wide active shooter exercise for November 8th. It'll be held at the BOCES campus in Goshen. It's a multi-jurisdictional event. It's going to be focused on school personnel and what their role is, and to let them know what to expect if, God forbid, something awful happened in one of their buildings. So we're really pushing this out to the schools, to the different organizations, police organizations. It's going to incorporate fire, EMS, maybe some DPW, buildings and grounds of the schools, to show how everybody has a role if, God forbid, one of these events happen. We're taking this very serious, and in fact, the county executive has partnered with us as well. He actually hosted a meeting last Friday with the law enforcement officials as well as the school superintendents to show the importance and to verbalize the importance of us all coming together for this type of an exercise. Again, God forbid it never happens, but we want to make sure that we pre-plan and are prepared for this. On the response level, the officers train yearly on how to respond to these events, but the actual real work comes in the managing of the events, and that's on both law enforcement and on the school end of all the aftermath of the situation, God forbid it were to ever happen. So we are putting a lot of effort into that. I'm sitting on the planning board to be part of that process as well. I also sat down with our superintendent, our local superintendent of schools, on June 30th to discuss not only that training, but some additional trainings that we could do locally with the school district on more of a personal level that we're going to try to work into the next school year as we enter into the September, October, November months. We've done some stuff in the past, but we want to make sure we continue doing that. Additionally, the upcoming event, we are looking, actually it's going to happen September 10th, community barbecue. The city has partnered with some of the local community partners to host another community barbecue. We did it last year for the first time. It was a really great turnout. We did it in Davidge Park. So September 10th is our day, and we'll have everything put together, and hopefully a lot of people from the community come out and join us. I do have some cases. Any questions with that? Anyone? Some cases just to go over some of the stuff that's happened since our last meeting. June 17th, during one of our gift patrols, that was the joint patrols we were doing with state police, ended up in a short pursuit. One of the officers ended up stopping the person, multi-time felony offender. During the traffic stop, they recovered 12.5 grams of cocaine. He was charged with criminal possession of controlled substance in the 3rd degree and the 4th degree, unlawfully fleeing, resisting arrest, obstructing reckless driving, unlicensed operation. Just good work by the officers, and it shows like bringing bringing the groups together that, their focus is very laser pointed to get the problem areas and problem situations. The 19th of June, we had a domestic/robbery. This is one of the robberies that is reported in our part ones. That's why I included it here. This was a part of a domestic in which the defendant ended up physically assaulting the victim, the female victim, throwing her to the ground, removing her cell phone, forcefully smashing it, breaking her property, so on and so forth. His actions constituted a robbery. So even though it counts as a robbery for us, it's not what people would perceive as a robbery on the street. June 20th, we had an additional robbery. Again, this isn't the traditional robbery you would see on the street. This was actually youths. It was a 14 and a 16-year-old, where the 16-year-old tried to forcefully steal the 14-year-old's bicycle. The 16-year-old did display a knife as well during that course. So that has been followed up, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that is being forwarded to the family court for some official actions against them. On June 25th, we conducted a prostitution detail, our narcotics unit, as well as the two officers in the plainclothes unit. They made 2 arrests of 2 females. One of the females was 47 years old, resides in Center Street, and the other was 34 years old from Long Lane in Bloomingburg. On June 28th, we had a fairly serious assault/stabbing. Came in just after 8 o'clock that the victim was in the Cortlandt Street lot, laying down. Officers responded there, immediately gave him first aid. Through investigation, it was determined that he was assaulted in the basement of a house on Linden Avenue, and he was able to give us the assailant's name. Officers were able to find the assailant probably within about 35-45 minutes on the upper end of Linden Avenue, trying to find a way to get out of the area. We actually charged him. We took him into custody, charged the defendant with assault in the first degree. However, when it was presented to the grand jury no-billed him and said it was a self-defense claim, which we can't understand that, but that was what the grand jury did. So, not for lack of effort there. On July 3rd, we responded to a shots fired call on 25 Prospect Avenue. We had no victims, no suspects, really very, very limited information. It was called in by our resident who ended up hearing the noise, the shots. There was some confusion whether or not it was fireworks or shots fired. When the officers got there, they realized that there were 7 shell casings on the ground. They canvassed the area for suspects, victims, called hospitals, so on and so forth. Did not come up with anything, no real intel to follow up on. However, we did take those 7 shell casings and entered them into the NIBIN system, which I've discussed in the past. It's a computer software program that analyzes those particles to see if they're a match to any other weapon that we do have in the database. July 5th, Midnights was patrolling and came across an individual, Kelvin Brown, 51 years old, resides at 75 West Main Street, pushing a shopping cart full of tools, and on top of it was a full-size plate tamper that's used in construction up Wickham Avenue. So they stopped him to inquire as to why. One thing led to another. He had just committed a burglary of the cement store, the masonry store on the corner of Beatty and Wickham. So they took him into custody, followed up the investigation. But just a point with this gentleman is we arrested him last year for stealing construction tools from the Paramount when the Paramount was under construction, and he's actually currently out awaiting sentencing on that previous burglary. On July 5th, we also conducted a marijuana/tobacco detail where we sent undercovers into smoke shops, gas stations, bodegas to see who was selling illegal, whether it was marijuana or if they would sell vapes or tobacco to underage people. We only ended up with 1 violator out of 292 North Street, Adams Deli. The clerk there ended up selling a vape to our underage participant, our underage undercover, which is an E-felony, so that person was charged accordingly. And we'll continue to do those on a periodic basis just to gain some compliance. I mentioned our flock system before, which is the license plate reader, the fixed license plate reader. Again, this is a great tool that's been used. Officers love it. They could get alerts to the car computers, to the cell phones in the cars. On July 5th, this is the one with Officer Kelly Conklin. She was in the traffic unit. She saw a flock alert come up for a stolen vehicle, which is a file 1. It comes up on the alert. She observed the vehicle, stopped the vehicle, ended up arresting the driver. He was 35 years old, from here on James Street. Had a warrant, an active warrant. He had a suspended license, and he had the stolen car. So great stop off of some software that we have. July 8th, did a taxi detail. We were receiving complaints about the taxis driving outside of the parameters of the city code, not having the proper licenses, mixing the hack licenses around. So we put together a detail. We did it in the evening. That evening, I think it was about a 5-hour detail. They made 10 arrests of people operating taxis outside of the code. And they also identified 17 taxis that had violations with their vehicles, and those owners were provided 10 days to rectify that, and then if not, they will face suspension and/or revocation of their medallions. July 11th, we dealt with a shots fired call on Phillips Street. Our witnesses called in. We had several witnesses to this, which was very fortunate to us. They saw 2 groups of 5 to 6 individuals, teenagers in each group. They had an altercation, and in the one group, one of the males pulled out a gun from his pants and ended up firing shots at the other group. To our knowledge, no one's been hit. We have no injuries, anything to that effect. However, as soon as it happened, everybody fled the area. Our patrols responded. We had a great response to it. Within a few moments, one of the patrols, actually Officer Conklin, came around the corner of one of the housing complexes and comes face to face with 3 of the people that were trying to flee. Ends up turning into an additional foot pursuit. With the assistance of some other officers, chased them down, and we were able to catch one of those individuals. Took him into custody, charged him for fleeing. We could not charge him with the actual shots fired because we cannot identify him as being the shooter. Just a couple things that came out of this one. The person that they did catch, he's 17 years old. We arrested him in April for an armed robbery that he committed in March of this year. He's out waiting sentencing and final disposition of that charge. Additionally, through investigation, we were able to determine that this originated earlier that day at the school over a cell phone being stolen, and then it kind of flowed out into the street, where it ended up with shots being fired. I lost my train of thought, sorry there for a second. The victim, we identified the victim, the individual that had the cell phone stolen originally. We were able to track him down, get his information, go to his house. The detectives went to his house that night to speak with him and his parents, wanted to make sure he's okay, and see where we could go as far as the investigation. The detectives were quickly turned away by his parents, specifically his mom, who said, "You need to leave my house. We don't want your assistance. You're not welcome here. You need to leave now." Part of this was captured on video. The detective showed mom the video. She again asked them to leave, said, "We don't need you. You need to leave now." So it's an obstacle for us to get cooperation. So we'll find some other ways to try to get that cooperation to continue this. This incident, as I mentioned earlier, the school has been very, very supportive with us. They provided us great video, helped us out with identifying some of the individuals that started with the original incident so that we had some direction to go. And then that goes into another incident, which I'll get into in a few moments. The following day, because we ended up having a helicopter up that day, the drones up, additional dogs trying to track down these individuals. We ended up going through Magnolia Park. The following day, around the same time, a resident from Magnolia Park called us to let us know that the group was back there. They believed they were looking for something, so we responded over there, which was great because we were able to identify some of the individuals we didn't know, get their names, got some pictures of some of the people to help us with our investigation. About 15 minutes later, that group met with another group on Blanchard Street behind the old Johnny D's. There's about 30 of them, and ended up in a big street fight there. As we approached that, they all started running. We were able to detain 12 individuals, all youth. Took them into custody, detained them, and actually, when we realized we didn't really have a charge to charge them with at that time, for lack of cooperation, they were taken to their homes, and the officers spoke with all of their parents to try to explain to moms and dads what's going on with these kids as they get out in the community. And again, they left summer school and were on their way home and got into this altercation. On July 12th, we dealt with a weapons offense on Wilson Street. It ended up being a road rage incident where some words were exchanged, and then one subject displayed a weapon to the other. The other gentleman was very cautious and remained calm, took down the person's license plate, followed him at a safe distance while he called us. We were able to locate the individual in Sutton Hill Apartments. He was already out of his vehicle, away from his vehicle, but we had enough information to say he was the driver. During an interview, he ends up saying he was the driver, so we were able to charge him with the menacing. Unfortunately, we were never able to recover the weapon. But again, something simple, road rage turns into something awful. On the 14th, another flock, the LPR hit, alerted officers to a stolen vehicle. They quickly found the vehicle. Short pursuit, ended up arresting Jalen Ross, 26 years old, Silver Lake Apartments. He had a stolen vehicle, ended up trying to resist arrest, run from the officers, suspended license, so on and so forth. But that is one of the instruments that's been very instrumental to the officers, is the license plate readers. This next one is an interesting one. Back in April, and I know it's a little bit behind, but we just had a good discovery in this. April, we took a fraud complaint from the city finance department that someone had created false payroll checks and was trying to cash them from the city, like payroll checks. So Detective Rosen did an awesome job really investigating this and found that the suspect is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Identified him, has been in contact with the police down there, and we'll be sending Detective Rosen down there in the early part of August to actually go down and interview the individual himself. So he's trying to steal from the city. We can't allow that. This next one's a little bit alarming, and it kind of goes back to my conversation or my comments about working with the school. This past Friday evening, Detective Slonick, off duty, attended the Orange County Fair with his family. While at the fair, this is about 5:30 in the evening. He gets there early, spending time with his son, his brother-in-law, his daughter, sister-in-law, some of the nieces, and walking around. They see this group that we've been dealing with, that we know has been involved in the shots fired, the fights. We're pretty familiar with the group. Sees them, they start antagonizing him, making shooting motions at him, calling him names, making comments to him and his family. He goes about his business trying to do it. One of our other officers is there, also off duty. They end up seeing him, like, making comments to him, throwing kisses at him, like, just being real antagonistic. They say about 15 to 20 of them in a group. Shortly thereafter, Detective Slonick says it's about 5:30. He's getting the kids together to go on a ride, and his brother-in-law says to him, Fred, what do you want me to do? Fred looks up, and they actually surrounded Fred, 15 to 20 of them, antagonizing him, taunting his family, just being very abusive. Fred grabbed his kids. He said the kids started crying. His sister-in-law started crying. Not sure what was going to happen. Grabbed them, told them to get away, and beelined it towards the state police barracks. They followed him all the way to state police barracks, just antagonizing him, making comments, inappropriate comments to the kids, to him. He got in there, they went about their business, and then he called me and let me know. We called the state police, had them look into it and whatnot. Very alarming that these kids are so brazen that they're willing to approach an off-duty police officer. They know he's a police officer because he deals with them. They're approaching him with his family and being antagonistic, and I give Fred a lot of credit. He's with his family, and I think he made the right choice in this situation.
Are there any charges that you can file?
We didn't have any charges, maybe a harassment charge, nothing real solid. So we started doing some additional work after that on this. And this is where the school has really stepped up to help us out with this. When they got wind of it, we started talking. I've been in contact with the superintendent over the weekend and earlier this week. Is any of that group that is identified as students, there's a section in their rules and regulations that if the person is a threat to the school based on their actions in the community, they can be held accountable. So that's exactly what they're doing. So they've identified about 7 individuals from this group that are still active students. So they've already started the process. They've been suspended. We had Detective Slanovic and Officer Shalaba testify today in one of the hearings. The hearing officer said it was outstanding because to have them right there to share their experiences and explain exactly what happened. So we have several more scheduled over the next couple of weeks. They have their due process. We'll support them all the way through that. We're happy they're supporting us through this as well. Since then, we've also started looking through some of our old cases that have kind of been sitting, trying to refresh them. The ones that we know these individuals are involved in, to try to get some momentum and getting some good solid charges. Like, we know a couple of them are involved in an incident that occurred in Newburgh earlier this spring. been in touch with the investigators there to make sure that we could put whatever pieces together to charge those individuals. I actually spoke with the district attorney's office today in regards to this again. We're going to explore filing ERPOs, it's just the extreme risk protection orders against all of these individuals, which will flag them that they can't buy ammunition, can't buy guns, and if they come across or try to, it'll be flagged. It's not the best solution, but it is a way to kind of get them into the system a little bit until we have some real solid charges on them. But
How old are they?
from 14, this group was like 14, about 19. So they belong to what they refer to as a gang. They call themselves the Tolok gang, or the Tolok group. TOG they call themselves. We've been dealing with them now for about a year and a half. Like most of our more serious incidents are involving them. Young, they're all young.
One of them was found guilty of harassment of charges, just ticket and then released.
For the most part, yes. So last year we had the shooting on Commonwealth. It was midday, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That subject we've realized now is part of this group. He was, arraigned and released. He's back out in the community. He was part of the group again. We have the individual I told you about with the robbery a few moments ago. He's out waiting, final disposition of his charge on an armed robbery. He's involved again in the shooting and all of this stuff. The individual on Chestnut Street is affiliated with this as well. He's the one we have a warrant for. We ended up doing a search warrant on his house, a no-knock search warrant. We had the Orange County SOG team kicking his door early in the morning to take him into custody. He was not in there. No one was in there actually at the time we went in, which was surprising to us because we were pretty confident that's where he laid his head every night. So yeah, there's many of them that have one of the main players in it. We charged with a robbery in November of 2021. He is out as well. So there are some concerns there. Yeah. Yes.
Charged, but they're just released and they're back out on the street.
And-
And then they're like, well, can't touch me.
And that is a very, yes, I feel the same sentiment. There's been a lot of changes in the law that raise the age. It went from being held criminally responsible at the age of 16 to now you have to be 18. So there's that gap there now. We have some changes in bail reform. We have some issues with prosecution. So it's a combination of a lot of different things. So sorry for so many, but I felt a lot of them were noteworthy and worth, sharing, not only to the commission, but to the community, whoever's watching. Any other concerns, questions with those case reviews? And as always, I'm always available if something comes up that you guys want to talk about more in depth or would like additional information on. Moving forward, I did forward some personnel complaints and internal investigations to the commission. They were emailed out on July 14th. I don't know if the commission had the opportunity to review them and would like to discuss them this evening and move forward, or do you need additional time? More time? So we'll table them?
Any more time, on especially on one, but I want to make sure that
Okay.
it's complete before we're
So
deciding. I
we'll-
think maybe on those, the full board should be here also.
Absolutely. So those will be tabled until the next meeting. Moving forward, I did also forward one of our updated policies, a new policy to the commission for the review. That was sent out on July 18th. It is called the Extreme Risk Protection Orders. The number is OGO 078-22. I don't know if the commission had the opportunity to review that as well. You want to table that as well?
Yeah. Is this in response to dairy laws?
No, that's in response to the governor put out a new law that went into effect July 6th. It's the red flag laws that if someone is found to be a harm to themselves or someone else, we file this application and we get them to put into a database that they can't purchase a weapon or ammunition. That's what I was talking about with these young group of individuals
Yeah.
that we're going to start working on with them as well. Part of the change in the law that the governor put into place is that every department, it went from you may do these to you shall do these in these circumstances. And one of the other elements is that every department must have a internal policy and procedure encompassing the new law. So that's what I sent you is the the policy and procedure to keep us up to speed with the new law. Any further questions with that? That is everything I had on the agenda this evening. I don't know if the commission has anything they would like to discuss?
Nothing with me, Chief.
Eileen, is there anyone online that has any comments or questions for this commission?
There is not.
We have one member in the audience. Do you have any comments or questions for the commission? Being that there's nothing else on my agenda, we have no further discussion, I would make a request that we move into executive session to discuss some personnel matters. I have a motion by Vignola, second by
By myself?
Mayor, all in favor?
Aye.
So we'll be moving into executive session for personnel matters at 5:14 PM.
Please be advised this ends the public portion of today's meeting. Thank you.